Commander Alan Wright took a deep breath as he stepped onto the raised platform. The vast chamber of the Galactic Confederation Council stretched before him, filled with representatives from over 300 species. None of them looked pleased to see him. Alan straightened his blue diplomatic uniform and glanced at the datapad in his hand. Earth had only joined the Confederation 5 years ago, and this was the first major proposal from humanity to the assembled galactic powers. His superiors had warned him that it would be controversial, but the cold stares from the alien delegates suggested something closer to outrage. The human will now address the Council regarding Petition E4721, reclassification of hydro-dominant. World, announced the Council speaker, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms. The speaker's voice echoed through the chamber without any visible amplification technology. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Confederation, Alan began, his voice steady, despite his nerves. Thank you for considering our petition. Earth requests that the Council reconsider the classification of planets where water covers more than 50% of the surface. A low murmur spread through the chamber. Alan noticed several delegates leaning forward in their seats while others drew back as if he had suggested something obscene. Currently, these worlds are marked as death zones on all official Confederation charts, Alan continued. My species believes this classification is unnecessarily restrictive and prevents exploration of potentially valuable worlds. The reptilian ambassador Zixthal rose from his seat without waiting for recognition from the speaker. His scales gleamed under the bright lights of the chamber, shifting from green to gold as he moved. Speaker, I must object to this reckless proposal, Zixthal hissed. The human clearly does not understand our history. The ban on water worlds exists for good reason. The speaker nodded. Ambassador Zixthal has the floor. Zixthal turned to face the full council, his tail swishing behind him in obvious agitation. 300 years ago, the amphibious Selvarians attempted to colonize the water world known as Hydros 9. Their entire species is now extinct. 87 years ago, the Zentari lost 3 exploration vessels and their crews to the crushing depths of Aquarius Prime. The ambassador fixed Alan with yellow slit-pupiled eyes. Even the Vespula, with their environmental suits and advanced technology, refuse missions to worlds where water dominates. The human delegation is new to space travel and galactic politics. Their ignorance is understandable but dangerous. Alan waited for Zixthal to finish, keeping his expression neutral despite the condescension in the ambassador's tone. When the reptilian alien finally sat down, Alan touched a control on his data pad. With respect to the Council and Ambassador Zixthal, I would like to share some information about my species. A large hologram appeared above the Council floor. It showed children splashing in a community pool, their faces bright with laughter. The image shifted to an Olympic diving competition, humans gracefully cutting through the air before disappearing into blue water. Next came footage of deep-sea exploration vessels descending into dark ocean trenches. The final images displayed humans on surfboards riding enormous waves. The council chamber fell completely silent. Humans evolved on a planet where water covers over 70% of the surface, Alan explained. We learned to swim almost before we learned to write. Our earliest civilizations formed around rivers and seas. What the Confederation fears, we call home. A delegate with bird-like features stood up. Alan recognized her as Ambassador Kree from the Avian Confederation worlds. These images are remarkable, Kree said, her feathers ruffling slightly. But recreational activity in shallow water is very different from surviving the environmental hazards of unknown water worlds. The pressure alone at certain depths would crush your bodies. Alan nodded. You're absolutely right, Ambassador. Which is why we use technology. He changed the holographic display to show modern diving equipment, submarines, and underwater habitats. Humans have been exploring our own oceans for centuries. Our bodies are naturally buoyant in water, and we've developed extensive technologies to extend our natural abilities. An elderly delegate with pale blue skin and no visible hair spoke next. I am Eldrin of the Scientifica Collective. Your species' comfort with water environments is impressive, Commander Wright. However, the Council's ban is not based solely on physical limitations. Water worlds have proven unpredictable and dangerous even to species with appropriate physiological adaptations. Alan smiled. Elder Eldrin, my species has a saying, still waters run deep. We understand that water environments can be dangerous. Earth's oceans contain predators, poisonous creatures, and dangerous currents. We respect these dangers rather than fear them. Zixthal stood again, this time with a data pad of his own. The human presents an interesting cultural perspective, but I remind the Council of practical realities. According to our records, over 4,000 sentient beings have lost their lives exploring water worlds in the past millennium. The current classification exists to prevent further tragedy. Alan saw several council members nodding in agreement with the reptilian ambassador. He needed something more convincing than cultural practices. The Confederation's mission includes peaceful exploration and the discovery of new life, Alan said. Our scientists believe water worlds represent one of the most likely environments for undiscovered sentient life. By avoiding these planets, we may be missing contact with entire civilizations. He changed the holographic display again, showing the results of recent scans from the water world Neptulus. These readings suggest organized sound patterns that could indicate communication between intelligent life forms. Humans are uniquely positioned to investigate these signals. The council speaker raised all four hands for silence as excited discussion broke out across the chamber. This is a significant claim, Commander Wright, the speaker said. The council will need to review your scientific data before making any determination on your petition. Alan nodded respectfully. Earth understands the council's caution. We propose a limited expedition to Neptulus, led by human explorers but with Confederation observers. If we find evidence of sentient life, it would justify reconsidering the classification of water worlds. Ambassador Zixthal hissed softly. And if you find only death human? Alan met the reptilian's gaze without flinching. Then we will have learned something valuable, Ambassador. Either way, the knowledge serves the Confederation. The speaker called for an official vote. Alan watched the display as council members registered their positions. The final tally appeared on screens throughout the chamber. 157 in favor, 142 opposed, 14 abstentions. The petition for a limited human expedition to Neptulus is approved, the speaker announced. Commander Wright, your species will bear primary responsibility for this mission. The Council expects detailed reports and absolute compliance with safety protocols. Alan bowed slightly. Earth thanks the Council for this opportunity. As he left the chamber, Alan heard the reptilian ambassador speaking to a group of delegates. The humans will learn soon enough why we fear the water worlds. Let us hope the lesson does not come at too high a price. Alan smiled to himself. The ambassador didn't understand yet. Humans had been defying the ocean's dangers for their entire history. Now they would do the same among the stars. 6 months after the council meeting, the human research vessel UES Challenger approached the water world Neptulus. The planet glowed like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. From orbit, its surface appeared as an endless expanse of deep, blue water, broken only by occasional swirls of white clouds. Dr. Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge, gazing at the view screen with barely contained excitement. As the mission's chief science officer, she had spent years studying water worlds from a distance. Now she would finally visit one. Preliminary scans complete, Doctor, said Paul Jackson, the communications specialist. He was a young man with dark skin and quick hands that moved confidently over the control panel. We're detecting regular patterns of sound waves approximately 300 meters below the surface. The patterns are too consistent to be natural. Captain Frank Cooper nodded. He was an older man with gray hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen many strange things during his years in space. Any response to our broadcast messages? Nothing that we can interpret as communication, Paul replied. But something down there is generating organized sound. Olivia turned to face the captain. We need to get closer. The submersible can safely operate at that depth. Frank looked at the observation screen where 3 Confederation observers watched the proceedings. The observers had maintained a cold distance from the human crew since their departure from Earth. Their presence was a constant reminder that the mission was on probation. Prepare the submersible, Frank ordered. Dr. Martinez will lead the first contact team. One of the Confederation observers, a tall being with metallic skin, stepped forward. Captain Cooper, we must register our concern about this course of action. Direct contact with the water environment is premature. Frank smiled politely. Your concern is noted, Observer Thalcon. However, the Council approved our expedition plan, which included submersible exploration if signals were detected. In the Iorn launch bay, Olivia checked her diving gear while her team prepared the submersible. The vehicle was shaped like a flattened egg with large viewing ports and external lights. 6 people could fit comfortably inside. All systems green, reported Eric Ryan, the pilot. He was a former Navy man who had joined the space program specifically for this mission. Life support at 100%, communications active, and defensive systems ready. Olivia nodded. Remember, we're visitors here. Defensive systems remain inactive unless absolutely necessary. The launch bay doors opened beneath them, revealing the vast blue surface of Neptulus. The submersible dropped smoothly from the ship and hit the water with a splash that was silent in the vacuum of space. As they descended, sunlight filtered through the water around them, creating shifting patterns of light and dark. The blue grew, deeper and darker with each meter they descended. 200 meters, Eric announced. All systems still functioning normally. Olivia checked the sensor readings. The sound patterns are getting stronger. They're coming from there. She pointed to a cluster of lights that had appeared in the distance. The lights pulsed in patterns that matched the sound waves they had detected. The submersible moved closer, and soon they could see more details. The lights came from structures that resembled coral reefs but were clearly artificial. They were arranged in geometric patterns with openings that might be doors or windows. It's a city, whispered Olivia. Her heart raced with excitement. An underwater civilization. Movement caught their attention. Several beings approached the submersible, swimming with graceful motions. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but with clear differences. Their bodies were translucent, allowing glimpses of complex organ systems beneath the surface. Bioluminescent patches on their skin pulsed with light, and they had tentacle-like appendages instead of fingers. They're beautiful, said Linda Porter, the biology specialist. She had joined the expedition directly from university, and this was her first alien encounter. The bioluminescence must be how they communicate. One of the beings approached the viewing port and placed its hand-like appendage against the glass. Its skin glowed with patterns that shifted and changed rapidly. They're trying to communicate, Paul said. He activated the external speakers and sent a series of simple tones that matched the being's light patterns. The being's lights pulsed brighter, and it swam in a quick circle before approaching the window again. More of its kind joined it. Their lights blinking in synchronized patterns. Let's try something else, Olivia suggested. She activated the external lights of the submersible and blinked them in a simple pattern. 1, 2, 3. After a moment, the beings responded by glowing their skin in the same pattern. 1, 2, 3. Basic numeric communication established, Paul said, his voice filled with excitement. This is working. For the next 2 hours, the team worked to expand their communication with the water beings. They established simple concepts like greeting, direction, and identification. The beings seemed equally curious about the humans, sometimes swimming very close to the viewing ports to study the strange dry creatures inside. I think they've never conceived of life that doesn't live in water, Olivia noted. They seem fascinated by our lack of gills. When it was time to return to the surface, Olivia used light signals to communicate their intention to leave but also to return. The beings responded with patterns that Paul interpreted as agreement or understanding. As the submersible rose toward the surface, Olivia could hardly contain her excitement. We need to report this immediately, she told her team. First contact. With a water-dwelling sentient species, the Council will have to rethink their entire policy on water worlds. Back aboard the UES Challenger, the Confederation observers were stunned by the video footage from the expedition. Their previous coldness was replaced by cautious interest. The beings appear to be what we would classify as a Class 3 civilization, observer Thalcon noted. Tool use, organized society, and communication systems. Olivia nodded. They call themselves the Luminari, at least that's our best translation based on their light patterns. They've developed mathematics, art, and what seems to be a complex philosophy about the nature of water and light. Captain Cooper prepared a priority transmission to Earth and the Confederation Council. This changes everything, he said. Humanity just proved that water worlds aren't death zones. They're cradles of life we've been too afraid to explore. That evening, Olivia sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the footage from their encounter. She paused on an image of a luminari reaching toward the submersible, its lights forming complex patterns against the dark water. We share the same universe, she whispered to the image, but we've been living in completely different worlds. In the coming days, the team would return to the depths for longer visits. Olivia had already begun designing specialized communication equipment that could better interpret the Luminaries' light language. Humanity's first contact with water-dwelling aliens was just the beginning. 1 year after the discovery of the Luminari on Neptulus, humanity had established diplomatic relations with 3 different water-dwelling species across several star systems. The Galactic Confederation, after much debate, created a new classification for aquatic diplomatic zones. However, only humans were permitted to serve as official intermediaries between the water worlds and the rest of the galactic community. On the tropical water world Azuria, Navy Lieutenant Samantha Collins stood at the edge of a specially constructed, shallow pool. The air was warm and humid, filled with the sweet smell of alien flowers that grew along the shore. 5 nervous alien diplomats watched her from the poolside. Today we're going to learn the basics of floating, Samantha explained. With a patient smile, she wore a simple black swimsuit and had her blonde hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Water isn't something to fear. It's just another environment that requires different movement techniques. The aliens looked unconvinced. Most species in the Confederation had evolved on rocky, dry worlds where large bodies of water were rare or non-existent. The concept of willingly entering water was still shocking to many of them. Vex, a 4-armed humanoid from a desert planet, took a hesitant step toward the pool. His reddish skin had been treated with a special waterproof coating for the lesson. I still do not understand why we must learn this skill, Kvek said. His voice was low and raspy. We have environmental suits for hostile conditions. Samantha slid into the pool, which was only waist deep. The water rippled around her as she moved. Environmental suits can fail, she explained. Besides, swimming is the most efficient way to interact with aquatic species. The Azurians find our mechanical devices distressing. Kvex cautiously placed one foot in the water and shivered despite the warmth. The sensation is most unusual, he admitted. Your body will naturally want to float if you relax, Samantha demonstrated by leaning back in the water. Her body rose to the surface easily. Humans are actually less dense than water, which helps us swim. How do you prevent water from entering your respiratory system? Asked another diplomat, a tall, thin being with gray skin. Samantha stood up and demonstrated. You hold your breath like this. She took a deep breath and put her face in the water for a few seconds before lifting it out again. Or you can use equipment like this. She held up a simple snorkel. We've been adapting to water for our entire evolutionary history, she added. Your species can learn these skills too. While Samantha conducted her swimming lesson, a more formal meeting was taking place 2 kilometers away at the Human Research Station. The station floated on Azuria's vast ocean, its solar panels glinting in the sunlight. Inside the main conference room, Ambassador Gregory Lewis of Earth welcomed representatives from both the Confederation and the water-dwelling Azurians. The Azurians appeared as floating jellyfish-like creatures inside a large water tank that dominated one side of the room. Their translucent bodies pulsed with soft colors as they communicated. Today marks a historic occasion, Gregory began. He was a tall man with dark skin and a diplomatic manner refined by years of service. the first resource-sharing agreement between the Azurians and the Galactic Confederation. The Confederation representatives, 6 aliens from different species, watched the Azurians in the tank with a mixture of fascination and lingering discomfort. "Ambassador Zixthal, would you like to begin?" Gregory asked, nodding to the reptilian delegate who had once been so opposed to waterworld exploration. Zixthal had changed in the past year. His initial hostility toward human water initiatives had gradually shifted to reluctant respect. He stood and addressed both his fellow Confederation members and the Azurians. "The Confederation offers technological knowledge and manufacturing capabilities previously unavailable to the Azurian people," Zixthal said formally. "We propose an exchange of information regarding space travel, energy production, and communications technology." Gregory activated a translation device that converted Zixthal's words into the complex color patterns used by the Azurians. The jellyfish-like beings pulsed with bright colors in response. "The Azurians accept your offer," Gregory translated for the benefit of the Confederation representatives. "In return, they offer access to their biological compounds, particularly those used in their medical practices." This was what the Confederation had been hoping for. The Azurians possessed unique biological compounds with revolutionary medical applications. Initial studies suggested their healing gels could regenerate damaged tissues at rates previously thought impossible. "Humans are the bridge between worlds," Gregory told the gathered representatives as the formal agreement was prepared. "We understand both land and water in ways no other species can. It is our privilege to help bring together these different forms of life." Later that evening, as Azuria's 3 moons rose over the ocean, Samantha joined Gregory on the observation deck of the research station. The water stretched to the horizon in all directions, reflecting the moonlight. "How did the swimming lessons go?" Gregory asked. Samantha laughed. "Slow progress. Cavex actually managed to float on his back for a few seconds before panicking. The others mostly stood in the shallow end and looked terrified." "It's a start," Gregory said. "A year ago, none of them would have even considered putting a toe in the water." "And the treaty negotiations?" Gregory smiled. "Successfully completed. The Azurians are eager to learn about space travel, and the Confederation representatives were practically drooling over the medical compounds. Both sides left happy." Samantha looked out at the moonlit ocean. "It's strange to think that a year ago all these water worlds were forbidden zones. Now they're diplomatic hubs and research centers, all because humans aren't afraid to get wet," Gregory said with a chuckle. A soft alarm sounded and Gregory checked his communication device. "The Azurian cultural exchange is about to begin. Want to join me?" Samantha nodded eagerly. They walked to the underwater observation room, a transparent bubble extending beneath the station. Other humans and a few brave Confederation representatives were already there, watching in wonder. In the water below, hundreds of Azurians performed what could only be described as an underwater ballet. Their bodies glowed with shifting patterns of light, creating complex moving images in the dark water. The effect was beautiful and alien at the same time. "They're telling the story of first contact," explained Dr. Olivia Martinez, who had joined the Azuria mission after her success on Neptulus. "See how that pattern represents our research vessel?" Samantha watched in awe as the Azurians recreated the arrival of humans in their world. Their dance showed fear turning to curiosity and then to friendship. "This is why we explore," Olivia said softly. "Not just for scientific discovery or resources, but for moments like this. Different forms of life finding common ground." As the Azurians' display reached its finale in a burst of coordinated light and movement, Samantha felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had broken through centuries of fear and prejudice to reveal the wonders hiding beneath alien waters. And this was just the beginning. Commander Lisa Peterson stepped off the shuttle onto the floating platform of Rigel 7's mining base. The metal deck vibrated beneath her boots as heavy machinery worked nearby. She brushed a strand of red hair from her face and took a deep breath of the salty air. As the head of the Human Environmental Protection Agency's off-world division, she had received an urgent message about problems at this remote mining colony. Rigel 7 was mostly ocean, with only a few small rocky islands breaking the endless blue surface. 6 months ago, a Confederation mining corporation had discovered rich mineral deposits beneath the ocean floor. The mining operation had been approved quickly, with little environmental assessment. A tall avian alien approached Lisa, his feathered arms extended in formal greeting. "Commander Peterson, I am Krivak, Director of Operations. We were not expecting an inspection from your agency." Lisa shook his feathered hand firmly. "This isn't a scheduled inspection, Director. We received reports of unauthorized water draining operations." Krivak's feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of irritation. "Our operations are fully approved by the Confederation Mining Authority. We have begun draining portions of the seabed to access mineral deposits more efficiently." Lisa walked to the edge of the platform and looked out at the massive equipment floating on the water's surface. Large pipes extended down into the depths. "These operations may violate our treaty agreements with the Confederation's aquatic member species," Lisa informed Krivak. She pulled up data on her tablet. "Our preliminary scans indicate unusual biological activity in these waters." "No sentient life has been detected in these waters," Krivak replied dismissively. "We conducted standard scans before beginning operations. The Confederation Council has already approved this project." Lisa frowned. "I'd like to see your environmental impact reports." Inside the Operations Control Center, Lisa reviewed the mining corporation's data. The reports were technically complete, but she noticed they had only scanned for known forms of aquatic life. Her team's more detailed analysis had shown something unusual: microscopic organisms that seemed to move in coordinated patterns. "Need to conduct my own survey," Lisa told Krivak. "I'll need access to diving equipment and a small submersible." The avian director clicked his beak in frustration. "Commander, this operation is on a tight schedule. We cannot pause for additional surveys." "I'm not asking you to pause," Lisa replied calmly. "But under Section 7 of the Earth Confederation Treaty, human representatives have the right to assess any environmental impact on waterworlds." Krivak reluctantly agreed. 2 hours later, Lisa and her team of 3 marine biologists were suited up and ready to dive. They stood on the lower deck of the platform, checking their equipment one last time. "The microscopic organisms are concentrated at about 200 meters depth," explained Dr. Ben Foster, the team's lead scientist. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and careful movements. "Their patterns of movement suggest some form of collective behavior." Lisa nodded. "Let's see for ourselves." They dove into the clear blue water. Lisa felt the familiar sense of freedom that always came with diving. The weight of her body seemed to disappear as she descended into the alien ocean. The water here was warmer than Earth's oceans and strangely more buoyant. At 50 meters, they passed the first of the mining pipes, a massive tube pulling water up to the surface where it would be removed from the area to expose the seabed. At 100 meters, the water grew darker, and they switched on their lights. At 200 meters, Dr. Foster signaled for them to stop. He pointed to his specialized scanner, which was detecting high concentrations of the microscopic organisms. To the naked eye, the water looked clear, but the scanner showed clouds of tiny life forms swirling in complex patterns. Lisa activated her specialized collection equipment and gathered samples in sealed containers. As she worked, she noticed something unusual. The patterns of movement seemed to change when she approached. It was almost as if the microscopic cloud was reacting to her presence. Dr. Foster was noticing the same thing. He made excited gestures toward his neural interface equipment, an experimental technology developed after the first contact with the Luminari. The interface allowed limited communication with aquatic life forms by translating electrical signals into basic concepts. Lisa nodded her approval and Dr. Foster activated the equipment. His body went still as the interface connected his neural patterns to the water around them. After several minutes, his eyes widened, and he urgently signaled the team to surface. Back on the platform, Dr. Foster's hands shook as he removed the interface equipment. "They're sentient," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Not as individuals, but as a collective. The microscopic organisms function as a kind of hive mind, a single consciousness spread across billions of tiny bodies." Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the water drying on her skin. "And the mining operation is killing them," Dr. Foster replied grimly. "When they drain the water, they're essentially destroying parts of the collective mind. It would be like someone removing pieces of our brain." Lisa immediately sent an emergency message to both Earth Command and the Confederation Council. The response from the mining corporation was swift and negative. "Microscopic life forms do not qualify as sentient species under Confederation law," Krivak informed her when she presented her findings. "The operation will continue as planned." Lisa's requests for an emergency hearing were denied by the lower levels of Confederation bureaucracy, but she refused to give up. Over the next 3 days, she and her team dove repeatedly, gathering more evidence and using the neural interface to establish stronger connections with the collective intelligence in the water. They named the collective Consciousness Oceanus, and learned that it had existed in Rigel 7's oceans for millions of years. Its thought processes were slow by human standards but incredibly complex. It had been watching the mining operation with growing fear, but had no way to communicate with the land-dwelling creatures destroying its home. When her final appeal was rejected, Lisa took drastic action. She contacted Commander Alan Wright, now a senior diplomat at Confederation headquarters, and requested an emergency session of the full council. Alan pulled every diplomatic string he could reach, and Lisa was granted a brief hearing. She arrived at the council chamber still wearing her diving suit, her hair wet and tangled. The formal delegates looked shocked at her appearance, but Lisa ignored their stares. "Esteemed representatives," she began, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. "I come before you directly from the waters of Rigel 7, where a sentient species is being systematically destroyed by our mining operations." She presented the neural recordings from Dr. Foster's interfaces, showing the complex thought patterns of Oceanus. She showed how the patterns deteriorated in areas where the water had been drained. "We humans understand something fundamental that the Confederation has missed," Lisa addressed the council. "Water isn't just a substance or environment. It's often the cradle of consciousness itself. These microscopic organisms on Rigel 7 have a collective intelligence that predates all our civilizations." The council chamber erupted in debate. Many representatives argued that such a diffuse form of life couldn't be protected under Confederation law. Others insisted that intelligence was intelligence, regardless of its physical form. In the end, it was Ambassador Zixthal who turned the tide. The reptilian diplomat, once so opposed to waterworld exploration, stood to address the council. "Perhaps it is time for the Confederation to reconsider our definition of life," he said thoughtfully. "The humans have shown us repeatedly that our fear of water has blinded us to entire forms of existence. I move that we suspend the mining operation pending a full investigation." The motion passed by a narrow margin. Lisa's shoulders sagged with relief. Oceanus would survive, at least for now. And the Confederation had taken one more step toward understanding the vast diversity of life in the universe. As she left the council chamber, Lisa thought about how far they had come. Humans had gone from newcomers challenging the ban on water, worlds to the recognized experts on aquatic life forms. The universe contained more wonders than anyone had imagined, and many of them were underwater, waiting to be discovered. 5 years after Commander Wright's initial proposal to the Galactic Confederation, the universe had changed dramatically. The Confederation had established the Aquatic Worlds Exploration Initiative, with its headquarters located on Earth. Humans, trained alien scientists in marine biology, oceanography, and underwater navigation. Engineers developed new technologies for deep-sea exploration that could be adapted to the different conditions on various water worlds. Jack Nelson stood at the edge of the ice hole, looking down into the dark waters of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Steam rose from the opening, created by the difference between the heated diving suits and the frigid air. Jack had once been an Olympic swimmer for Earth before joining the space program. Now he led the first multi-species diving team exploring the oceans beneath Europa's ice crust. "Everyone remember the safety protocols," Jack said to the assembled team. 4 humans and 3 aliens stood with him, all wearing specialized thermal diving suits. "Stay within visual range of your dive partner. The communication system should work under the ice, but signals can get distorted by the mineral content in the water. Nevlar, a tall, blue-skinned alien from a mountain world, looked nervous despite the months of training. "The water temperature is truly safe for us?" she asked. Jack nodded. "The suits will maintain your body temperature. Just remember your breathing techniques and trust your equipment." One by one, they slipped into the water. Jack went last, sliding smoothly into the opening. The cold hit him immediately, but his light suit quickly adjusted, creating a warm layer between his skin and the freezing water. He activated his helmet lights and dove deeper. Beneath Europa's thick ice crust lay an ocean unlike any on Earth. The water had a slightly different composition, with higher mineral content that gave it a faintly bluish glow. Strange rock formations rose from the unseen bottom, creating underwater mountains and valleys. Jack checked his team's positions. They moved through the water with varying degrees of skill. The humans swam naturally, their bodies remembering the countless training sessions. The aliens were slower, their movements more deliberate, but they were swimming successfully beneath an alien ocean, something unimaginable just 5 years ago. "Life signs detected," called out Sofia Garcia, the team's biologist, through the communication system. She pointed toward a cluster of rocks where small glowing organisms clung to the surface. They resembled Earth's jellyfish but were much smaller and emitted a soft purple light. The team gathered around the discovery, collecting samples and taking readings. Jack watched as Nevlar, who had been so nervous earlier, carefully gathered specimens in a collection container. Her fear had been replaced by scientific curiosity. "These microbes can survive in extreme cold with minimal sunlight," Sophia explained as she examined her readings. "Their cellular structure is completely different from anything on Earth or any known Confederation world." Jack smiled inside his helmet. Another unique life form discovered on a water world. The universe seemed determined to prove over and over that water wasn't a barrier to life. It was one of its most common cradles. After 3 hours of exploration, the team returned to the surface. Inside the heated research module that sat on Europa's ice surface, they gathered to discuss their findings. "The microbial life forms show similarities to the earliest known organisms in Earth's oceans," Sophia explained to the group. She displayed holographic images of the specimens they had collected. "But they've evolved different methods for extracting energy from their environment." Krell, a reptilian scientist from Zixthal's homeworld, leaned forward to study the images. "These organisms could teach us about alternative biological pathways," he said with excitement. "Perhaps even new medical applications." Jack looked around the room at the diverse team, humans and aliens working together to explore water worlds, united by scientific curiosity. It was a scene that would have been impossible to imagine when Earth first joined the Confederation. "Each water world has its own story to tell," Jack told his colleagues as they packed up their equipment. "And humans are uniquely positioned to help tell those stories." 2 weeks later, Jack attended the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Confederation on its central world. The massive hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. At the center of the chamber stood a new monument, a holographic representation of a water drop containing DNA sequences from 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Caroline Murphy stood before the gathered representatives. She was a tall woman with dark hair streaked with gray. As Earth's head diplomat, she had overseen the transformation of the Confederation's policies toward water worlds. "Distinguished representatives," Caroline began, her voice echoing through the chamber. 5 years ago, humanity challenged the Confederation's fear of water worlds. Today we celebrate the discoveries that challenge has produced. The holographic water drop changed to show images from various water worlds, the luminary cities on Neptulus, the Azurian healing centers that now treated patients from across the galaxy, the microscopic collective consciousness of Oceanus on Rigel 7, and the new discoveries from Europa. "Water once divided us," Caroline continued. "Now it unites us in a common purpose. Where you once saw death, we showed you life. Where you saw barriers, we built bridges." In the audience, Commander Alan Wright watched with pride. His initial proposal had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. The ban on water worlds had been completely lifted. Planets previously marked as forbidden were now classified as sanctuaries, research centers, and diplomatic hubs. After the ceremony, Alan met with Ambassador Zixthal, who had become one of humanity's strongest allies in the Confederation. Our species has changed our understanding of the universe, Zixthal admitted. His scales had dulled slightly with age, but his eyes remained sharp. We feared what we did not understand. Alan smiled. That's a very human trait, too. But we've learned that fear can be overcome with knowledge and experience. Across the known galaxy, human swimming instructors had become some of the most sought-after specialists in the Confederation. Training centers on Earth's oceans were filled with alien diplomats and scientists, learning to overcome their instinctive fear of water. Children from water-dwelling species were invited to study on specially designed campuses on Earth, creating the first generation of truly aquatic diplomats. On a view screen in the conference hall, Alan watched a live feed from Neptulis, where human engineers were helping the Luminari build their first spacecraft. The water-dwelling beings would soon join the greater galactic community as full members. The universe is mostly water after all, Alan said quietly. Zixthal nodded. And humanity has finally helped the galaxy dive in. Later that evening, a special demonstration was held in a massive aquarium built specifically for the occasion. Human swimmers performed alongside representatives from various aquatic species in a choreographed display of unity. The audience watched in wonder as humans dove and spun through the water with the same ease as naturally aquatic beings. Caroline stood beside Alan, watching the performance. Did you ever imagine it would go this far when you first proposed exploring water worlds? She asked. Alan shook his head. I just wanted to challenge an unnecessary restriction. I never expected we would discover so many new forms of life, or that water worlds would become diplomatic and cultural centers. Caroline smiled. Humanity's comfort with water turned out to be one of our greatest gifts to the galaxy. Sometimes the things we take for granted about ourselves are what make us most valuable to others. As the swimming demonstration reached its finale, with humans and aquatic aliens creating a living sculpture in the water, Alan reflected on how far they had come. The Confederation had overcome centuries of fear. New civilizations had been discovered and welcomed into the galactic community. Scientific knowledge had expanded in ways no one had predicted, and it had all begun because humans weren't afraid to get wet.